This is part 5 of the completely free ArchiCAD course. If you're new here, firstly, my name is David Tomic. I'm a registered architect here in Western Australia. And today we're talking about doors and windows in ArchiCAD. If this is the first episode you're watching, jump back to part 1, catch up to where we are, and let's dive in to part 5. So continuing progress on from part 4, where we left off with all of our walls completed, we're going to jump down to our ground floor plan. So on the ground floor plan, as you can see, it's clearly just windows. There's not much going on whatsoever. So we're going to make it a little bit more exciting, a little bit more entertaining. First of all, let's start with our door tool. If we select the door and then click on the settings icon, alternatively, you can press Command T to open it up, or Control T if you're on Windows. We can see we have our doors available to us. We can start by using our folder structure, which allows us to see all of the doors available to us. And above that, in our link to libraries, we have empty door openings, garage doors, hinge doors, and so forth. We can obviously look through all of these one by one to find the perfect door that we're looking for. Alternatively, we can create some favorites as well. Or last of all, we can simply search by typing in door, or if you know the door that you're specifically looking for. Let's do it the old school way, let's do it the long way, just to showcase all of the parts for you guys. First of all, we're going to hit that chair icon, which is your main folder structure and embedded libraries. I personally do use the 4D library because I find their doors and windows significantly better, but because these come free with ArchiCAD, we're not going to dive into any paid extras. We're just going to use what is available to most people around the world. So our front door is obviously going to be a hinge door in this scenario. It could be a pivot, it could be a sliding, but let's stick to hinge door for this. If you scroll down to find door 26, that is your most basic door possible. It is just a typical rectangle door, hinged on one side, nothing special on either side. You can see there's 1,000,001 options of different styles, transoms, highlights, etc. But we're going to use this and we're going to move through it one by one. So let's revert back to the very first of the drop-down menu and go through this one by one. Up the top, what you're going to see is very similar to the walls and the slab. It is pretty consistent throughout ArchiCAD. So the width of the door, the height of the door, the sill to the story 0. If you're unaware of what the sill is, if you're looking at a door, it is the threshold at the very bottom. Same for windows. The windows is the bottom is the sill, the top is the head, and the sides are the jamb. They're just technical architectural terms that you'll get familiar with over time. The reveal to the wall core is basically how far in or out it pushes it against the wall. So if you're using double brick, need to close the cavity off, you'd use this setting to adjust. On the right hand side here, you have 5 different icons that basically highlight what this door looks like in different viewports. So you obviously have your plan view, you have your elevation view, you have the 3D model, you have it rendered out, and then you just have some generic information about the door itself. Typically, I'll flick through the first 3 just to understand what it looks like. So in plan view, I know what's showcased, elevation, and 3D. For the very purposes of this, you don't need to go into too much detail of understanding all of these dimensions. But when you do get into some technical architectural detailing, all of this will be critically important, especially depending on the doors you actually select. Because when you come to dimensioning at the very end, all of this will be critical. And if you go and change your door style, your jambs, your door widths, whatever, all of these will change slightly. So you want to get familiar with this later on, but not for now. If we slowly click through, we can go to our door settings and openings. So first of all, door leaf 1, we can choose from almost a million, 60 available styles to us from ArchiCAD as default, which is pretty much all the doors available to us from your local hardware store or your local door supplier. So you can select any one of these that you like. For the purpose of this, I'm going to go to HV grid just to be able to actually articulate a few more elements of these settings. If I now go to elevation, you'll see that's changed completely. If I wanted to add a door handle as well to increase the 3D appearance of this, let's simply click door handle 1, away we go. You can change the opening type and the frame type as well. You can also increase natural ventilation, which adds basically a little bit of a gap at the top. You don't need to worry about natural ventilation for the purpose of this. It is more of a construction detailing process as you get more familiar with ArchiCAD. Now we could click this little icon here to jump ahead and adjust all of these HV grids, but I'm going to get to that a little bit later and slowly tap through one by one. The frame of the leaf provides you the ability to change the actual frame itself. A 27mm frame is actually quite small, but I'm not going to adjust it. I'm not too worried about it. Just note that you can change the external frame here if you wanted. So if I wanted to smash that up to 100, you'd see a very big profile created. I'll drop that back to 27 and continue with this. Moving to natural ventilation, same as what we ticked before. You can tick it, untick it. Door leaf style is where we would have jumped ahead if we were in door settings. So if I hit this button, it would automatically jump to door leaf style, which gives us a little bit more control of the actual HB grid. So for example, we can change our actual sizes of the leaf. The lower 200, I'm going to adjust that back down to 100, just so it's continuous all the way around. The grid width and thickness is defining these mullions in between on the glass. So if you wanted to increase them, you'd see they jump up quite significantly, and you can change the position to either one side or not. Throughout basically means they're going to cut each individual square of glass to the size of these. Whereas if you go inside or outside, they're basically just going to stick them on. Again, more of a detailing thing, not too important at this point in time. Now, the reason I selected HB grid is because it allows us a lot more flexibility here. So we can change this to 5, we can change it to 2, we can change it back to 4, or whatever we seriously want it to look like, because now we have a lot more control. So if I change it to 4 and 2, I can get quite a nice door happening. Moving on to the handle settings, again, very similar. You can kind of adjust the height, so you can adjust the position, you can change your handle, and you can add a kickboard. Not too important. And continuing on, again, more settings that aren't really too important at the moment. So for example, if we wanted to change that from 90 degrees opening to 45, we could change that here, and the same goes for the 3D. In 3D currently, it will only be shown as completely closed, but we can open that up if we want to. The next settings are more to do again with documentation. Not too much to be worried about as a beginner. We can get back to that later on as we dive deeper. Model attributes is somewhere you're going to want to stop. So if we click on this little 3D icon, you'll see our door is pretty white. There's not much going on. There's not much happening whatsoever. Let's say we wanted to change it to a nice black monument door. So by obviously selecting on the side arrow and selecting a different color, it will automatically change. Because I have uniform door surfaces ticked, it will automatically change everything at once to make sure it is consistent. I'm happy with that personally. I don't want to go through everything one by one. So I have no issues with changing all of the frames to monument in this case. The leaf glass, again, I'm happy to leave as clear. Otherwise you can change that to frosted, mirrored, satin, whatever you really want. So now we can switch back to our elevation or our floor plan view. Because we know what the door is going to look like, we don't have to worry too much further. As we continue to move through the settings, we're going to get to our reveals and our door edges. This is how it works against the actual wall itself. For the purpose of this, I don't really want to reveal. I'm not too worried about it being anything special, but you can change these for the architectural look and feel. Masonry arches are a little bit more technical, but they're quite easy. You simply increase it, change the style, and you'll get some sort of masonry head on top of your window or door. For me personally, I don't want a masonry arch at all. I'm going to keep that unticked and move forward. When we get into fixtures and fittings, this becomes a little bit more architectural, a little bit more detailed, but it gives you a lot to actually consider. And this is what makes a door so detailed and so important. So we start talking about our casing, gaining, thresholds, sunshades, sills, etc. If we were to go in and start clicking on bits and pieces, you'd see what happens individually as we start ticking. If we were to tick the threshold, it means we're crossing over from an internal to an external. How we want that threshold to look, we can adjust that in here. And these are all construction details that you just need to be aware of at this time, that they exist, but you don't have to worry about it from a presentation point of view. When we get into some serious architectural detailing of doors and windows, and you know specifically what you're going to install, this is where you're going to be spending a little bit of time. Especially if you want a sill, for example, and you want all that water to run off the bottom, or you want a little ramp or anything like that. These details are very, very important, and you want to spend some time on them as you go through. However, for us, we're not going to worry about any of them, so we're going to keep clicking through, and you'll see more and more options available for each individual setting. The sunshade is something a lot of people do use for general aesthetics, and just like doors, you have a few options that you can choose from. So if you're building maybe a beach hut or a beach shack and you want to close off those windows when nobody's home, It's a very simple way to put some sunshades on. If you have any of those elements ticked, you'll then activate the model attributes for all of them, which allows you to change the colors, very similar to what we did for the door. When we get to the floor plan and section detailed views, personally, I just hate the orange. Even though it is the correct setting and it is the right line weight and everything, I just absolutely hate it. So I tend to just simply change that to the same line weight in black, so I don't have to look at it continuously. If you don't want to go through changing every single item to black and slowly changing bits and pieces like we just have done there, what you can do is simply come to the bottom, overwrite the line weight, select, change it to black, override the object pen as well. Now everything will automatically be changed to black, so you don't have to actually worry about changing individual colors. If these are ticked, these you can change a million times over and nothing will happen until you untick these. Continuing along, it's providing a minimal space diagram. These are for your standards to make sure that it actually complies with clearances. So you can adjust these to suit actual Australian standards, disability clearances, access and egress. However, this is different for every single country, every single state in some countries. So you just have to recognize this is very specific to your area. Tags and labeling is something we're going to get onto a little bit later on. It is to identify our doors and windows. I personally like to just come back and update all the tags when I'm ready, rather than trying to continuously update it as I'm moving along, because you just spend way too much time trying to do that. Last but not least, you have your description and all of your extra bits and pieces. So for instance, if you wanted to do a bill of quantities through ArchiCAD and you knew this door was going to cost you $2,000 to install, paint, everything, you could drop that figure in there and eventually it would spit out all of your information. If you want to, you can introduce all the manufacturers, the locations, details in here, which is going to spit out the information at the very end on the door and window schedule. But then again, we'll get to that at the very specific time when we need to. So all of these description features, not too important. Best thing now is you can actually press OK. All of your settings are good to go. You can simply drag your door in, click once, click again, and press the escape button. Now, if we go into 3D, you'll see the door is all black and we are missing all of that glass and all of that detail. Now, you might be thinking, what's going on? Why is it doing that? Number of reasons. It is based on the actual model settings. We want to make this look fantastic. So let's open it up. Let's come back into our model attributes and simply change 3D detail level from model to full and press OK. Now we have all of that detail that we originally included into that door. If we come back into our floor plan and select our window tool this time, we can do a very, very similar scenario here. All of these settings are basically identical to what we've just gone through in the door settings. So I'm not going to go through everyone individually again. It is just going to be an absolute bore and a waste of time. The only one that is different is your custom corner. Now your custom corner, if you tick the corner 1 or 2, it's simply going to slice that corner directly at a 90-degree angle by default, which means you can then connect 2 corners against the side of a wall. So let's do 2 things. First of all, let's come into our model attributes. Let's change this to black so it matches our door. Now let's zoom into our bedroom, hover over one of our walls, making sure our sun icon is where the sun is coming from. So you don't want the sun to be inside, you want the sun to be on the outside. Click once, and then we can move our mouse left to right to indicate where we want that corner. So by hovering over the left-hand side, you'll see that corner column is present on the actual right-hand side where the corner needs to be. Tapping escape, command or control D, I can shift that window all the way to the corner. Holding my option on my Alt button, I can repeat that same process to reintroduce another window in the corner. Now, if I select one of those windows, select the black hotspot, I can make it 2.5 meters wide, and then I can replicate the same here. So click on the hotspot and just simply start typing 2,500, press enter. Coming back into 3D, you'll see we've created that corner window right there on the edge. Now, I hate this corner window. It doesn't look right. It doesn't fit to the actual architectural aesthetics. So let's first of all Command T, open it up, double click on these 2 overrides down the bottom and change it to 21 black. Now we've got black lines everywhere, which is exactly what we're looking for. We're going to jump to our sash options and change that to a HV grid very similar to our door. 2 vertically, and I want to have 3 horizontally, and then I'm simply going to press OK. Now, just like before, we've introduced all those additional elements, but they're not showing up. We have two options here. We can go back into our window and adjust the model view settings, or we can come down to the bottom to our actual model view settings where it says 01 site. If I select 01 site, you'll notice that a number of different options come up. As you progress and slowly get more and more detailed, you adjust all of these settings to reflect the information you need. Personally, I like to see a lot of information. I'm very detail orientated. So let's hit construction and you'll see all of the model settings instantly change for all elements. This is a great way to make sure you're always getting all of the information you need. So even though we upgraded this to full, previously we weren't getting the hinged indicators in 3D and we weren't getting the handle, and on our windows we weren't getting these HV lines at all. So now that we've changed this to construction, we're a lot better off and we can see a lot more. If we want to make sure that this is continuous, we can simply hit the settings button, go get current settings view and press OK. So every time we go back to 3D, it's going to showcase what we want to see. Now, if we come back to the ground floor, we can repeat this same process for all the internal doors, all the extra windows, and all the extra bits and bobs. So I'll stop talking for a minute and I'll quickly speed through all of these internal and external doors. Now, if you do want this ArchiCAD file, you can jump down to the Patreon down below, sign up, jump onto our Discord chat, and access every single course part individually per ArchiCAD file, so you can cross-reference your model to what I've done. So what I've done is quickly gone through and just added a ton of windows and doors to our actual design on the ground floor. What I want to do is simply start adjusting a few things now to make them work. So selecting that door, let's make it 2400 tall. Selecting this window, I only want it to be about 600 wide. Command D allows me to move it in 3D, and I want it to be perfectly aligned next to this door. I also want to stretch out the actual height of the window. So hitting one of the hotspots, stretch vertically, and dragging down allows us to move it to a bit more of a reasonable size. I can repeat that same step, align it, drag it, drop it, and then if I want this window and this window to look the same, I can hold Option and then hold Option Command to actually drop them and align them. Then I can continue moving all of my elements around, updating my door window sizes as I see fit. And there we go. Now we have all of our windows ready to go on the ground floor plan. This is going to be our carport and that's where our stairs are going to be. So I haven't dragged any windows into that section. What we want to do now is come up to our top floor plan and actually introduce some more creative windows, some bifolds, some louvers, something a little bit more technical, a little bit more detailed. So let's jump back to our ground floor plan, Command up to jump to our top floor. What I actually want to do is drag this back into our staircase because I don't want that there. So I'm going to select all of these walls, Option G to ungroup, select my blue line, go to my offset tool, and then drag that approximately back there. I can then reduce that section a lot bigger and increase the size of this overall space. You can actually fit something nice and reasonable on this side now, whereas previously you couldn't. So let's focus on these balconies as the main critical point. First of all, let's say I want some sort of little planter box here to really give this elevation articulation some life. So first we're going to design a little planter box, and then we're going to design a retractable louver screen. So let's hold the Option button, copy this wall across, hit P just like we learned before. Let's make that about 2 meters wide, drag that back in all the way. Selecting those two walls again, Command T. We don't want to link them at all, and we only want to make them about 1 meter high. Coming back into 3D, you'll see we've adjusted a few bits and pieces, we've created our planter box. What we are missing is the actual first floor slab, which I haven't created on purpose because we're going to keep adjusting this upper floor until it's just right, and then we'll add it a little bit later on. But for the purpose of this, we've created that little planter box. We want to create one more wall on this side and we want to link it back into this side. Now you might be thinking we've just created a big slab of wall on this side that does absolutely nothing. But that's how we're actually going to create one of our custom bifolding screens. So let's jump back into our door tool. Let's open up our door settings. Let's go to sliding and folding doors. we can either select the bifold or the folding door, whichever one we really want. For this instance, I'm probably just going to go the single bifolding door and have it all pushed to one side. Now, this is where it gets creative and where we get a little bit more technical. So let's keep this HV grid on. Let's directly jump to the HV grid settings. We want to drop all of these to 50 millimeters and make it a very thin profile. Ideally, if we do it out of steel, we might even be able to get away with 40 millimeters, so we can drop that quite thin. Next, we want to change our actual panel grid layout. Vertically, we don't want any. We just want to hit that to 0, which will automatically default to 1. Horizontally is another scenario. We want to bump that up until we are roughly happy with the look of it. So as the doors increase, they will change. I've adjusted it to appropriately where I see fit. Press OK. Let's drag and drop this door into the scenario. And then what we're going to need to do is actually extend it all the way across. So Command T opens it up once more. It's about 4 meters wide, so I want to have 5 doors. And then I want to probably have 8 or 9 horizontal mullions. 9 might look a little bit better than 8. Lastly, we're going to come into our model view settings. We're going to change everything to the same color. Let's pick a nice wood texture. So let's go a nice horizontal walnut. And then for the glass, which is all the individual spaces in between, we just simply want to hit air, which gets rid of everything in between. Now, personally, I still think the width of this grid is a little bit thin. So if I bump that up to 50, maybe 40 to match the rest of it and press OK, then I can come back into 3D and adjust the door where it needs to be. These are just simply louvers. So I'm going to increase that to 300 and I'm going to offset that 300 from the top. So simply typing in 300, tapping the minus button, we get what we want to see. And you'll see these louvers are now created. If you don't want them to be opening in 3D, jump back into our settings, go to opening type and width in 3D, simply hit 0, and we have a fully closed system. Now we can repeat that same step for this side section here. Because it's only 2.8, we don't need as many doors. We'll drop that down to 3 doors, press OK, go back into 3D, and you'll see we have our screen created relatively quickly. Now, because our doors are opening on the outside, what we also got to be very mindful of is a balustrade. If we were to open these doors, people would fall relatively quickly and hurt themselves. So we don't want to do that. We want to put a balustrade in, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. On this side of the stairs, we also want to replicate something very similar, but we just want to make that a window. So if we dive back down to our bedroom, grab one of these corner windows, or even let's grab this games room window, come to the stairs, drop that in all the way, adjust it to full length, come into 3D, make sure it is the same height as our bifold doors over here, open up our settings, go to the HV grid, change the number of grids. So vertically we want 1, horizontally we're going to need a few. So let's go 50, maybe 40, and adjust that width to 40 as well. So overall, I'm happy with that. All I need to do is change from black to walnut, press OK, and then architecturally looking at it from the front, we have our beautiful bifolding doors. Because we don't know what we're doing upstairs just yet, we're going to come back to that in the objects and furniture section of this tutorial. We're going to leave that as is. We're simply going to introduce one window here, reduce the overall length of it, and last but not least, go to our doors, go to our door settings, open up our sliding doors, and drop an external sliding door into our project here. Now to wrap this video up, we're going to introduce one last element. So let's select this wall that was originally our planter box. Let's relink that back to our roof plan, 0 it out, press OK, go to our window tool, open up our window settings, simply type in opening, find a regular square opening, press OK, introduce that into our design here. Make sure our sill is 1 meter, jumping into 3D and aligning our sill height with our window heights over here. We'll see that we've now created an opening, allowing that light to come through, but yet connecting our wall back to our main house so it isn't flapping around in the wind and we don't have to tie it across here. Anyway, that's all from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, the playlist to the side of me holds all of these tutorials so far and all of them to come. If you loved it, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below as well as the notification bell. But like always, I'll see you next Monday.